talks about what it means to be human. And it says this: God, infinitely perfect and blessed in himself, in a plan of sheer goodness, this is outstandingly beautiful, in a plan of sheer goodness, freely created man to make him share in his own blessed life. And I'll unpack this for you. For this reason, at every time and in every place, God draws close to man. He calls man to seek him, to know him, and to love him with all of his strength. So that means God, infinitely perfect and blessed in himself. God had no need of anything. God has no need. The only reason, perfect in himself, a family, God's a Trinity. We know this, but if you could just think of this for a second, God exists as a family of love. And he's creating not because he needs to be loved, but because the good is diffusive. Love pours out. So he creates you for no other purpose than to share in his own beautiful life forever. That is why God created you. He didn't create you to do something you don't want to do, to manipulate you, to jump through hoops. God has no desire to manipulate you. The only person to give us the gift of free will, of the divine gift of free will, and to never manipulate it. And you and I often do that with each other. We try to get people to do what we want them to do, and to think it's their idea, but it's really our idea because we want them to do what we want them to do, right? But see, God doesn't do that. He gives us the gift of free will, and he just continually draws close to us. This is why we ache for beauty. This is why we ache for communion. This is why we ache for intimacy. It's because it's what we're made for. And in the book of Revelation, Jesus says what? He says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. I stand at the door and knock, and anyone who opens to me, I will come in and dine with him. I'll have supper with him." And so for a Jew to come into your house and to have a meal with you means that you're a family member. They don't just eat with anybody. So Christ comes into our lives, and he's knocking on the door of our hearts, and he's waiting for a response. And if you've ever seen a very famous rendition, there's very famous paintings of that particular scripture passage where Jesus is standing at the door and he's knocking. Okay, it's probably above your grandmother's plastic-covered couch, okay, on the back wall there. And if you look very closely, there's like shrubs, and there's like usually a little lamp in the corner, and Jesus is knocking on the door. And can I just tell you, for one Halloween, somebody on Instagram put like a Halloween bucket in to sound like he was trick-or-treating at your door. I'm like, who does that? Oh my gosh. Anyway, but he's knocking at the door, and if you look very closely at the painting, you will notice that there is no door handle on the outside of the door. Indicative of what? The door can only be opened from the inside. So Jesus is never going to open the door to your heart and force his way in, because he's a gentleman. He only draws close. He doesn't press the doors down to your heart. He only draws close. And when he calls you, he invites you. He doesn't force himself upon you. So he comes in pursuit of you. And God speaks to us through many ways. He speaks to us through the scriptures, through the church, through the sacraments. He speaks to us in many ways. And he also speaks to you in a way that is known to you alone. If you've ever had a moment where you knew God was speaking to you, and you're trying to tell a friend of yours, and you're like, I know that's God speaking to me. Like, how do you know? You're like, oh, I know. Like, that is God speaking to me. I just know it. Because that's what people who love each other do. They have nicknames. They have a certain language. They have a way of relating that's known to them alone. And if he stands at the door of your heart and he knocks, and he will wait. He's very patient. God's very patient. Very patient. And if you find that you can only open the door this much, God will respect that. And he will come in. I mean, he's a perfect gentleman. He comes in to the degree at which we allow him to come in. He will never put his foot in the door and force his way in. And if you open it more, like as relationships grow, right? Relationships grow. He comes in and he fills our hearts, and he reveals his heart to us, and he calls us out of ourselves. But I think all of us, to be quite honest, and myself included, all of us have parts of our hearts where that door is shut. And we're not really sure we want God in there. And I think our fear is at times that God will leave us. So we close the door even tighter, if so, or we turn away from God, and we don't understand that he doesn't leave. He just stands at the door and he knocks. And he knocks and he knocks, and what does he do? He draws close to us. So his initiation of the gift, God is always calling us, and our response is just that. It's always a response. Like, you're here tonight because God called you. If you're a young person, you might be here because your parents made you come, but I respect that. But it's because God called you, And God wants to speak something to you. He's always speaking to you because he wants you to know your story. He wants you to know who you are. And he's speaking the language in the depths of your heart of who you and I are. So I think it's very important for us to understand who God is and how our lives are ordered, because if we don't understand that, it's going to be very easy to be told a different story. As we know, there's different narratives that compete in our lives. If I could just talk for a second about what it means to be human, because this is very important as well. So if you look at the back of the catechism, and you look at the glossary, you're going to see a definition. And this is a definition of a human person. This is you and I. And it says this: the human individual, made in the image of God, this is so great, not something, but someone, a unity of spirit and matter, of soul and body, capable of knowledge, of self-possession and freedom, who can enter into communion with other persons and with God. So you and I, made in the image and likeness of God, not something, but someone. And this is the battle that we face between feeling sometimes like something versus someone. Do you have somebody in your life, you know this already, do you have somebody in your life that only calls you or texts you when they want something? And you see your phone light up and you know it's that person, and they're only calling you because they want something from you. They're not interested in having a relationship with you or being in your life. They want something from you. And what is our first instinct many times when we see that person texting us or calling us is it's off-putting. We're like, oh, not that person again. I don't want to deal with that, you know? Because we know inherently we're not something to be used. When I ran a daycare, when I lived in Seattle, I ran a daycare for 8 years at our Catholic school there, and it was very great to see little kids, because little kids will reveal this in such great ways. And like my little friend, my little 5-year-old friend, you know, kids don't have much of a filter between here and here, for better or for worse, okay? So what they think will just come out of them. And long before they've been wounded, long before, like you and I, where we've learned how to self-protect, and we've learned coping mechanisms, and we learned facades, little kids, they don't have that yet. Thank God, right? And I feel like we spend the rest of our lives learning how to be like that once again, and we forget. And so the little girls would, you know, they would, at homework time, they would spread out along these long tables, and they would build these elaborate fortresses around their homework. I think they spent more time building the fortresses than they did doing their homework, okay? But they built these elaborate fortresses around their homework. Why? So nobody could copy their answers, okay? So they would, like, be buried in these little fortresses, like, looking over, and they, you know, go back to their homework, and they would look over again. And inevitably, some little kid would come and sit down next to one of the girls and be like, hey, girl, what's up? You know, so we'd go and sit down next to the girl, and he'd be, like, looking over her barrier. She'd, like, push him away, and I could see some sort of skirmish is happening over here, you know, and I'm like, what's going on? And this little girl would say, sister, he does not sit next to me, or he says he will not talk to me at lunch. He only wants to sit next to me because I've done my homework and he hasn't, and that's not fair. I was like, all right, girl, I can't argue with that, you know, like, you go, right? Because she's 7 years old and she doesn't want to be used for her homework answers. And she knows that inside. And we know the stakes just get higher as we get older of how we use people and they use us, and we know inherently it is so heartbreaking to us, right? Because the definition of love that we subscribe to as Christians is to will the good of the other. So I know that I love you, based on how willing I am to will what is good for you, to choose what is good for you, to see you for who you are. And this is the deepest desire of our hearts, right? So you and I are a union of spirit and body, spirit and matter, soul and body, that our bodies and our souls go together. Your bodies will separate at this time at death, but they will be reunited once again. Your bodies are so good that at the end of time, God will resurrect them and you will have them forever. Forever. This is why it's said that, you know, this is why dead people and ghosts scare us, because we know that there's something wrong when a soul is separated from the body, that we're meant to go together. We're not angels. We're human beings with a soul and a body. That we are capable of knowledge, of knowing things, of self-possession, of free will, and freedom, what? Being able to see what is good and to choose the good, okay? And in this, you and I enter into communion with other persons. So if I were to ask you, if we had time, and I won't do this, but if I were to ask you, what are some of your moments that you wish would never end? What are some of the moments where you said to yourself, I wish time would stop here? I would be willing to bet this, I would guess this, that they probably have to do with communion. A relationship, joy, intimacy, peace, belonging, being seen, being known, being loved, being part of something bigger than ourselves. We're actually, you know, we're meant to be in society. We're social beings. This is why we worship as a family. This is why you're conceived in a family. You're conceived in a union of people. We're raised in a union go to school with other people, we work with other people, we worship with other people, we need other people. Heaven is going to be a family forever. I thought if we were to think about maybe some other things in life where we said to ourselves, not like, I wish this moment would never end, but we say to ourselves, I wish this moment would have never happened, which we all have those as well. I bet they would have to do with things of the opposite nature, of death, of divorce, of betrayal, of hatred, of feeling isolated, you know. Do you remember your first day of middle school or high school, right? Remember the first day you went to the cafeteria for the first time? And you looked at all those little kids, right? So here you are with your tray of some unknown substance on your tray, okay? And you're standing there and you're kind of gazing upon the face of like 1,000 kids. And over here are the cool kids, and over here are the jocks, over here are the nerds, you know, some of them anyway. And you know, there's like all these people, and you're standing there with your tray, and you're looking for a place to sit because your friends aren't with you. And what's your first thought on that first day of school as you face the cafeteria? Is this school going to be academically rigorous? Okay, no, that's not your first thought. Okay, I can tell you that right now, okay? Your first thought is this, probably. Is anybody going to like me? Does anybody want to sit with me? And quite frankly, as adults, that's often our same question. You go to adult parties as well. And you walk into a room with your cocktail, shrimp, and all that, and you're like, man, can I just sit with somebody that I know that likes me, you know? And how many of us, you know, you've had a friend say to you in the back, and they're like, hey, come sit next to me. There's a seat for you right here. And you're like, oh, thank God, you know? And you go and you sit down. But how many of us, as adults and as young people, have passed by tables where there were clearly seats available, but not one for you? Thank you very much. Keep on walking. And it's those parts of our hearts where we don't feel like we belong, where we don't feel like we fit in, and we don't understand what's happening. Because to be a human means to be in communion. And this is part of our story. This is the joyful mysteries, this is the sorrowful mysteries, this is the glorious mysteries of our lives. Where God comes into our life, right, to tell us the truth of who we are. There's a very famous painter named Rembrandt who has painted many things, and one thing we might look at tomorrow is his prodigal son, his painting of the prodigal son. But this is actually a simple sketch that he did, and he sketched it in, I think, 1658. And this is a sketch of Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. It's the story from Matthew 8, where Jesus goes into the house of Peter, and what happens, his mother is there sick with a fever in the bed. And it's very interesting, the attentiveness of Christ. This is what we want. This is our desire, that somebody would see us. And she's in bed sick. Who knows how long she's been sick? I don't know what she has. She's got a fever, so her body's trying to fight off some sort of infection. And what does Jesus do? He doesn't come in and just sit down. He goes and he sees her and he tends to her. And what does he do? He touches her. He touches her. And as soon as he touches her, the fever leaves her. And I love his rendition of this, is where he doesn't just touch her and leave her. He actually touches her and then pulls her up. And what does she do? Out of gratefulness, out of gratitude, she comes and she serves them. Where Jesus comes into her life, like he comes into your life and he comes into my life. And he's always gloriously uprooting our lives. Thank God. I'm so grateful because our idea of God, my dear friends, is not too big. It is far too small. Far too small. And so God creates you and me with a story, with a plot in our lives. And all of us love a good story. If you've ever been kind of captivated by a good movie or a good book, have you ever had that happen where hours pass by and you can't believe all that time has passed by? You're like, oh my gosh, it's been like 3 hours, I can't believe it. Because you're just totally just riveted into a story. The reason why you love a good story is because you're part of a good story. It's called salvation history. It's the best story ever. And what does every story have? Whether it's Lord of the Rings, whether it's Narnia, whatever story that you love, whatever movie that you love, it's got a plot line. It's got a hero. It's got an antagonist. There's an obstacle to be overcome. There's some sort of drama in the story. Usually the hero has a fatal character flaw. You wonder if is the hero going to make it? And have you wondered in your own life, man, if I'm going to make it through my own story, sometimes I'm not really sure if I'm going to make it. And in this story, right, Christ is always revealing who he is. But see, there's many chapters to a story. Many chapters. And I know for myself, for a long time, you know, I didn't know my story. I had never asked myself, where do I even come from? Like, what's my story? You know, you have an idea, yeah, I'm from this family, and my family descended from these people, but I'm talking about the details of the story. And you know, we're familiar with the beautiful things, the joyful things, but just like everybody else, man, I had some sorrowful chapters in my story that I did not want to read. And what happens in those sorrowful chapters, my dear friends, they don't just go away. Those chapters, what's underneath the chapters, the sorrow, the things that are never uttered, those things don't just go away. They also bear fruit, like the beautiful things. But the dark things bear some pretty dark fruit. And I knew in my life that I wanted to be encountered. Like I wanted somebody to see me. And I had never fallen in love with Christ. I grew up Catholic, but I had never fallen in love with Christ. But I knew that I wanted to do something with my life. I knew something very deeply. And Henry Mallon, a very, very famous Catholic priest, very famous Catholic author, he says this. He says, being the beloved expresses the core truth of our existence. And this is the desire of being seen. This is the desire of being seen, of being tended to, of being loved, of being known. And notice that it doesn't say being a beloved or being just kind of somebody random. It's being the beloved expresses the core truth of our existence. We want to be seen. We want to be known. You know, since I travel so much and I'm very honest with my own story, I think one of the beautiful things about being so honest is that I have the pleasure of hearing other people's stories. And I hear all kinds of stories. I hear stories from people who grew up in wonderful homes. I hear stories from people who had some things I can't even imagine surviving. And here they are, not just surviving, they're thriving. It's amazing what the human heart can bear, you know. And you know, you hear stories of people like the simple birthday memories or the Christmas memories or the things that, like we said, that we wish, you know, would never end, those moments that we wish would never end. And you hear stories of people of experiencing that reality of being the beloved. Because that's what happens to us in our baptism. We're actually indelibly marked. The reason why you have a white gown on when you're baptized is because you're ontologically changed. Which means that when you leave the church, whether you're carried out or whether you walk out, depending how old you are, that you're not the same person that you were when you entered in. That the moment you're baptized, an indelible mark is placed upon your soul forever. Forever marking you as God's beloved son or daughter. Forever. And there's nothing that you could do, or there's nothing that anybody could do to you to change that. Which means you and I are not orphans anymore. Which means you don't have to navigate life on your own. You don't have to figure it out. And I don't know about you, but I've had some pretty severe moments in my life where I felt like I was all alone. And I felt like there's nobody I can tell about this. There's nobody I can turn to. There's nobody that cares. Okay, we'll talk more about that tomorrow night. But I feel like I'm all alone. But the truth is that you and I are marked as the beloved. And God sees us. And I think, it's why this is important is because how we see God, it directly affects, how we relate to Him and how we relate to others. And I remember this, one man came up to me after one of my talks, and he was probably about 70 years old. And, we talk about how we see God and how how parents relate to us. And his parents had been long deceased, And he told me this story that when he was a kid, this is one of the reasons why we don't like being compared to other people. Like, we just don't like it. Like, we don't like being used. We don't like being compared to other people as well. And he was saying that in his family, his older brother was the one who was the star of the family, right? And his parents would often compare him to his older brother. They would say, like, look, man, what's wrong with you? Like, look at your older brother. He's a captain of the football team. He went to Harvard. Like, what's wrong with you? What's your problem, And he said, it was so amazing that he could be articulate like that, but he said, all I wanted was my dad just to see me for me. He said, I wasn't like my older brother. My brother was very different than me, but he's like, I was his son too. And he said there would be moments like maybe in the living room where his dad would sometimes notice him. But as soon as his older brother would walk into the room, he said, I was invisible. And to this day, the man struggles with, like, how does God see him? How does God love him? Because you see in his heart desire to be seen and to be known and to be loved. And this is who we are, my dear friends. This is who we are. This is how God sees us. When he looks at you, he doesn't compare you to your brothers or your sisters. He doesn't look at you and wish you were different. He doesn't look at you and say, he'll never repeat you. From the beginning of time when Adam and Eve were created to the end of time, if God ever stops creating people, if there ever comes a time when God says creation is consummated and finished, if that ever happens, God will have never, ever, ever, ever recycled or recreated or reincarnated a single person. You are the only masterpiece there is. That's it. I mean, just Dr. Peter Craig also says, we love artists. Like, we're artists because God is. I mean, imagine how creative you have to be to never, ever duplicate a single person. The billions and billions of people that God has created over the generations, we can't even fathom the sheer number. Never once never once repeated. Never once. So who you are, even as you sit here tonight, that you have within you a gift that God has given you to reveal to the world that nobody else can give. And it's not so much of what you do, it's who you are. This is why Satan wars against us so deeply to speak to us that we are not beloved, that you do not belong. It's because he knows that when you and I live as beloved sons and daughters of God, that we bring his grace to the earth and we break the power of darkness on the earth. Because that's what people want. They want an encounter with the living God. Like all of us do. I want to encounter God, and one of my favorite speakers right now is, I really believe he's the Fulton Sheen of our day, it's Bishop Robert Barron. And he was giving a talk on Aquinas, and he was talking about the non-competitive nature of God. And I love this quote from his talk. He says this. He says, when the true God comes close, we become radiant and beautiful, and we are not consumed, we are not destroyed in competition. This is so great. The closer God comes to us, the closer he comes to us, the more luminous and the more human we become. So when we allow God close to us, and not just like in rote prayer, or yes, I went to Mass, I did my Sunday obligation. This is what I'm talking about. When we allow God close to us, he doesn't take anything from us that's authentically human. We become more human. And you see that gloriously alive in the lives of the saints. We become more humane. And I had the distinct privilege of going to Poland last fall. I never went to Poland. And we went to a lot of places in Poland, but I tell you, the two places that marked me the most that I will never forget is number one, we went to Auschwitz. And secondly, we went to the Divine Mercy Shrine. And we went to them back to back. And I remember the day we went to Auschwitz, it was actually a warm October day, and it was packed. There were so many people from all over the world. And you study Auschwitz, if you've been there before, you study Auschwitz in history, in school, or in college, but it was quite another matter to actually be there in person. And I just could not, it absolutely, honestly, it just totally wrecked me. It totally wrecked me on how a society could get to the point to where they willingly exterminate an entire race of people. Because see, it didn't start out like that. It started out with small things in the heart of so many people, the small things, and those things kind of amalgamated and became something large, and it became just a fear-based movement that completely wanted to destroy a whole group of people. And I remember thinking to myself, as you saw what the people suffered, and you saw the whole thing, I was thinking, how inhumane. How inhumane. And then you go to the Divine Mercy Shrine, right, where Jesus Christ promises St. Faustina this divine mercy, where God lavishes his mercy upon us. And you see what he's doing in your life and my life. He's not seeking to truncate us, like we talked about. He's not seeking to get you to do something you don't want to do. When we allow God close to us, he makes us more human. And I think you see that very clearly in the life of somebody like Mother Teresa. Probably one of the most famous women ever. Right, this tiny little 4'10" Albanian nun, this tiny little woman who changed the world. And people said, what, like her whole thing, if she were in a room like this and we were all dignitaries, we were kings and queens and heads of state, people that were with her, that were in groups with her, that were with her one-on-one, said it was her presence that filled the room. That when you would talk to her, she was so in tune to what you were saying. She was not looking around the room. She was focused on you. She was listening to you. She would pray for you. When you asked her to pray for you, she would pray for you. And listen, people would just weep. They would weep in her presence. They said, she's so beautiful. She's so beautiful. Because Christ in her life was so close to her. It was his fragrance that was illuminating from her heart. And my dear friends, he is irresistible. Christ is so beautiful. And her whole mission, the reason why we know her as Mother Teresa today, starts with what? Because she was a sister in a convent as a school teacher for many years. She had a very comfortable life. She was very holy. And one day on a retreat, she's going to a retreat, and she hears Jesus Christ, her beloved spouse, call her to what she calls a call within a call. To leave everything behind and to go out into the slums. There was no plan. He didn't give her a handbook. And to go and start picking up and caring for dying people. And her whole mission began with what? She picked up a man who was dying in the gutter, who was being eaten alive by rats. I mean, the poverty in India, we can't even imagine that kind of poverty. And she picks the man up, this tiny little sister, with some other women that she's with, she picks the man up, and she brings him back to the convent, and she bathes him, and she tends to his wounds. And what happens? He dies. And people would criticize her throughout her life, saying, why are you wasting your time with people like this? Like, why are you wasting your time? You know that you can never eradicate poverty. Why are you wasting your time? And she would say, if we can just give one person, the dignity of knowing that they're loved, even in their deepest sickness, their deepest sorrows, to die knowing that somebody sees them and cares for them, and it is all worth it. The woman is radiant. What is it in our own lives, my dear friends? What is it in our own lives where Jesus is desiring to come in close to each one of us? Where he's desiring to illuminate our heart, to make us more luminous. He is not coming to compete with us. There is no divine arm wrestling match. Like we talk many times about the will of God, like the